I'm here with a good friend of mine who I met, I guess, a short time after arriving in Paraguay. For the purposes of the video, I'm going to refer to him as his nickname that I often call him, and we think it's a bit of a blast, which is El Chaco. Firstly, thanks El Chaco for agreeing to have an interview with me here. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. I've been looking forward to doing this with you ever since I've seen some of the other interviews, getting some of the really interesting stories of other crazy people who made their way down this way.
Yeah, well, now you're on the list of crazies, so that's pretty cool. It's a rare breed to be associated with. Just started a series called Property in Paraguay, and part of what we're doing is just getting around and speaking to different people who have had experiences with different aspects of buying property, with a particular emphasis on things that they've learned along the way, and maybe things that in retrospect they would have looked back and thought, well, gee, I wish I had known that at the time.
It's the only way to live down here.
So hopefully you've taught me some things myself, and I'm hoping to pass those on to people who watch this video. So just to get straight into the meat of it, you purchased this property how long ago?
Well, we made the offer at the end of 2021, and then it was finally closed, I think, in February of 2022. But because of the terms of the deal when we'd started it, we were able to take possession pretty much right away. And we originally started using it as like a weekend home because it had a little bit of a little house on it, and then we would come here on the weekends. But we ended up contracting an architect to give us a design and help lead the build, and we're sitting in the quincho of the expanded part of the property. So
sure,
yeah, but it's not the same process as back home in Canada at all.
In what way? What's the difference?
Well, so we had only bought one home in Canada before we left, and so we went through the buying process once, and we went through the selling process once. And because technology has advanced so much, you can kind of do everything on your phone back home, right? Your realtor will call you up and say, okay, here's the offer. I need your signature here, here, and here. And you do this kind of digital signature thing, and then you go and click the boxes, and then off it goes, and back it comes, and all together, everything kind of gets kind of wrapped up out of the way, and you don't have to go or do anything. But in the case of this place, we purchased from owners who actually live in Ciudad del Este, and we were living in Asuncion at the time, and so every single time we had to do any kind of signing, we had to get in the car, drive all the way to Ciudad del Este, sign the documents, and then come back. We had to do that a few times, and there's all these different processes along the way, and we thankfully had somebody who was helping us with it, and she warned us a lot about, there's a lot of traps that people can set. So for example, we had originally made the offer where we put 10% down at first, and then another 50% kind of at the midway mark of it, and then the remaining 40% on the last signing day. And she noticed something when we were doing it, that just even the way it was worded in the contract was that they were going to, even though we gave this payment in the thing, they were going to issue what's called a pagare, which is like a IOU. And had she not caught that, then, if people on the other side were being dishonest, which I didn't take them to be doing so, it was an honest mistake, but you could then be on the hook for paying that amount that you may have already paid, even because you're signing off on this pagare, this IOU system, that would have basically put in the paperwork that, I still owe this much. And so thankfully she caught it. You got to get this whole team behind it when you're doing the whole thing. So you got to deal with, notaries, escribanas. They got to send things off to different departments. And thankfully it was done well in our case, because now we're dealing with another issue where we have basically illegal occupants living on a portion of our land. Mm-hmm. And, we were told that they had a private contract that gave them the right to live in this spot, and they were just finalizing that, so they would alter the title and blah, blah, blah. Well, it turns out they didn't. And they'd actually been at this for 17 years. They have not a piece of paperwork on them. We they tried to trick us into signing off on part of the property to them, which might have actually flipped the title if I was really dumb. And so we caught that in the act, and we were like, okay, listen, you guys have been a bit of a hassle for us for pretty much the whole time we've been here. Tried to be charitable. I offered some money to them to kind of take it and maybe move to, I even lined up a place for them that they could have bought with that same money and then even still had money left over on it. And we had a deal in place, and on the day that we were supposed to sign it, one of their family members got greedy, came in, tried to bump the price up, and we're like, look, you have no leverage here. So, you know, the title's in my name. I've got all the documents. You have literally none of the documents. We investigated that to make sure that there were no documents of theirs missing anywhere. And the amount I was offering to them was roughly what the property value would be worth, even though it was already mine. And yeah, it was just it's been a bit of a process. They're still here now, but you know, we've published the legal case in the newspapers. We're really moving along on this, and probably in the next 1 or 2 months, it'll be resolved. We're doing what's called a reivindicación, which is like a claim. Like you're basically saying, I am making my claim on my property, and ergo, because I want to use it for something different, you're going to have to vacate. So the cops will come, and the government will come, and they'll bring tractors. It's not a pretty way to go, but I mean, again, we tried the best that we could to kind of do it with some dignity and some charity. These are people who, you know, play loud music all, you know, at different hours, have, you know, toss garbage onto our side of the fence, you know, use improperly their bathroom setup. You know, it's like an outdoor bathroom type setup, and just kind of those things. So we're kind of getting to that point where we would like to kind of put that chapter to bed and move on. And so, you know, for anybody who's looking at properties, one of the things that I would absolutely recommend is make sure nobody is, you know, illegally living on that property, because it's going to be a bit of a headache to get them off. And you might want to, you know, you might want to go, oh, I don't, you know, you're bleeding heart. You don't want to let them, you know, you don't want to displace anybody. But it's like, well, listen, like, if you're buying a property and you find out that somebody's on there, well, they're gonna have some rights, and you're gonna have some rights, and you have to kind of make sure that you've got everything lined up. And if you don't, then, you know, you're gonna have a big headache. Or and in our case, we looked at it because they had a daughter move in, and we're looking at it and going, okay, that's one more household. She's got kids coming in, so that's more people coming in. So that's, you know, they're outnumbering us about, you know, 7 to 4, and that starts to become a concern. And in terms of like a security aspect, you want to secure your perimeter, and so that's kind of one of the things that we've learned. And the Paraguayans have this term, they call it derecho de piso. Have you heard that term yet?
No.
Okay, so it's kind of like it's roughly translated the right of the floor. And so the only way that you learn things, you got to get thrown to the floor first, and then pick up yourself afterwards. And I've gotten so many derecho de piso moments in my time in Paraguay.
Yeah.
And that's this time and the time before, because we actually originally moved to Paraguay in 2013. And we were here from 2013 till roughly the end of 2015. And we were just renting then, but always in the back of our minds was like, you know, beautiful country, a beautiful place to live. And we got our permanent residency when we did that. And then we went back to Canada to have our daughter, and then when things got a little bit sideways, we decided, okay, you know, got this permanent residency, this cedula in the back pocket, and I always looked at it as kind of this, you know, this get out of jail free card that we could use down the road, and sure enough, we ended up using it and coming back down. And so we sold our house in Canada, and then took a little bit of time. Thankfully, I had set up a tax number before I left, and all we had to do is kind of pay the fines for every month that we didn't report while we were gone. And that comes to that comes to about $10 Canadian per month. So 50,000 guaranis per month. So it's not going to crush you if you have to pay those things. But we got caught up on that, and that led to us being able to get a bank account, which is very difficult in this country. It's very difficult for a foreigner to get it. I mean, it's a little easier. Let's say you have a salaried position here. Like, let's say you get, like, we've met other expats who are brought here to be teachers or brought here to be, help out with the banks or help out with certain things. But if you're a self-employed person like myself, they don't like you,
No.
and they actually will see you. It's kind of this guilty until proven innocent sort of mindset that they have in the banks, because they're cracking down so much all the time on what they call money laundering. But so anything you send from outside, it's like got this like major red tape on it. But thankfully, like we ended up getting in with a bank that's based out of Brazil called Itaú, and they we went over all of our paperwork, and they took a chance on us, and we've actually had a really good experience with them since. So I'm able to transfer money in from Canada pretty much within a day. I could have access to my own money within a day, and I use that for paying all of our different bills and all that kind of stuff along the way. Of which there are, they come up, right? Like,
of course.
You got power bills and internet bills and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's you kind of learn as you go. It's not an easy mode country. That's something that we've kind of had to explain to people is that it's beautiful, it's laid back, it is cheap in a lot of ways. It is cheap. However, there's certain cultural things and administrative things that come up that you kind of learn along the way, and they can be really frustrating if you let them be. If you let them be. Like, I mean, like with this case we're doing with the occupants, I find out, in order to do that, I have to make a guarantee against damages done to them. If they made a claim that they actually own it and they could prove it, then the court would have to charge me for the loss. So I had to put down a guarantee, and the guarantee was, I was originally told, if you just put down your vehicles as a deposit or a guarantee. I'm like, what's the chance of me losing it? And the lawyer said, absolutely none. Because we've already done all the homework. This is just a formality. So I go all the way to Chaco to go and register my guarantee. This is yesterday, and get there, and they're like, "Oh no, it has to be someone else's property. It can't even be yours." So it's like you're learning these things as you go, and you just kind of get used to rolling your eyes occasionally and going, it's Paraguay. But the pros completely outweigh the cons. They completely outweigh the cons. And there's a charm that comes with this place, and I look at this place that we've been able to establish here. I mean, just in the 2 years that we've been fully living on the property, we've been able to develop all kinds of stuff. Like we've been able to get our laying hens, our chickens, we got our ducks, we got our we got tilapia ponds. We've got we tried doing the sheep thing, but we found out that we've got a plant on our property that we will never be able to eradicate completely, and it's apparently poisonous to goats and sheep. So we're down to our last 2 sheep and kind of having to keep one eye on them. But we're going to try cows, or a couple of dairy cows later, and it's just kind of fun. And the nice thing is too, Paraguay is very, like, if you've lived in other parts of the world, more developed nations, you're going to have to go through red tape for everything. And so, for example, camera can't see it, but I did an extension on my office, or our guest house, to make an office and a home gym. The whole thing cost me about maybe $3,000 to do the whole thing, and didn't have to get anything signed off or anything like that. Just like, it was just like, it's nice, those kind of things. I've said it before. We've got a groundskeeper here. He's multi-talented. He's got plumbing experience, electrician experience, all kinds of things. And so, if we decide, hey, we're gonna do a new irrigation system, okay, we buy the pipe and we get the water tie in, and then he digs the trenches, we set it up, and it's done, right? Yeah. Like, it's just like, I'm gonna do this with my water, I'm gonna do that with my water.
Yeah.
Right? It's just kind of it is the Wild West.
Yeah.
Right? It's the Wild West out here, and so there are things to look out for, though, and I mean. The property that we did buy, it is, it was titled. They say al dia, meaning like up to date, titled. And so when you're looking for your home, okay, not just like an investment property, but like the home you want to move into, that you're going to plant your flag on, you want to make sure that it's got a good, clean title. And that means like nothing, no liens on it. I mean, this is stuff you should be doing back home. But It's got no liens on it. There's no extra claims on it or occupants on it, and you can set yourself up nicely. But after once I've paid off the remainder of the debt that we took on to finish construction on the home, I'm really thinking about maybe going, taking what I've learned so far and maybe moving on to trying to purchase other land to kind of connect, get something that maybe is a little bit less touched and maybe bring power to it, bring water to it, and set it up for somebody to actually set up and live afterwards, or maybe leave to my children down the road, And I said about the titled land, titulada, they call it. They have this other kind of land that'll come up. You've probably heard of this term a bit, but they call it fiscal or fical. And it's like untitled government land that somebody has lived on, but they've kind of made a claim to, and they can prove that they've done it. And if you get an offer of land that seems ridiculously cheap, chances are it's going to be fiscal, or it's going to be in this state. Now, that doesn't mean you can't turn that into a titled property, but it might take you a couple of years, or it might take you maybe even 5 years to do that. And you're going to have to go through some legal hoops, but it will still be cheaper than doing it the right way. And so maybe somebody who's thinking about coming down here, setting themselves up, and then maybe trying the property investment line of thinking might want to investigate how to flip some of these fiscal land into titled land that have a fresh, clean title on it that can't be challenged or questioned afterwards. And so I think that's my next order of business. Is I'm thinking maybe I might try that out. Like across the road from me, there's somebody who's got a kind of a weekend home there, and he was saying that once the occupants have left, he's open to selling. I might consider buying it through a private contract with them, and then just seeing how that process goes to kind of flip that into a title property and make it more valuable and more stable, I guess would be the way to go.
Well, I guess that's the sort of thing that you'd probably want to tackle only after you've been through some hoops like you have, and you've now got a lawyer that you trust.
I do trust, yeah. And that's the tough one thing too, is just finding somebody that you can trust. We've had people that have helped us, and helped us along the way with lots of different things, and then something down the road, once they've got that trust, they flip a switch and they go evil mode on you, and you have to be very careful. One of the things that we've kind of discovered in terms of how to find a proper contact is try to make friends in the community you're in, right? And so, and make friends with people that don't have a financial interest in your, goings on. So, for example, I actually met my lawyer through my massage therapist, and so I go to this guy once a week, and we chat about all kinds of things, and he knows from his perspective, like, he's not going to get anything out of any of the legal work that he's passed on to a lawyer that he trusts. He just wants one of his clients to do well because, well, I'm going there every week. He wants that client to stay. So it's a little bit different. If he's not getting money directly from me or some sort of commission or something like that, it takes it out of there. But then you take those kind of suggestions from people and you run it by other people. Oh, what do you think of this person? Or have you heard about this person? Or let's look at what we can. You end up doing a lot more research on the people helping you than the actual subjects that you're involved in.
Yeah. So just back to the squatter situation. So you've purchased the property. There were people on it, but you thought they were on the property under certain arrangements and for a certain tenure. But then it turns out that it's not the case. So then you go through the process of trying to negotiate with them. They don't agree.
Difficult too. They don't even speak Spanish.
Yeah. So now you've put a legal process in place, and how's that going to play out?
It's already won. It's just a matter of kind of the timing and the processes. So the way that it worked out was, when I bought the property, I was under the impression, because that's how it was laid out in the title, that I was getting 4.5 hectares of land. Now the thing is that I have tried walking through my forest. I've tried going through certain spots, but it's pretty dense, and so I have yet to see the other end of my property. So I got to get a topographer in, and we're going to mark it off and do all that kind of stuff. But when we were kind of looking into getting the topographer in, we started noticing some things. So, for example, I thought that when I was told by people, it was a 5-hectare property, but half of a hectare was withheld because of 2 quarter-hectare portions along the road. And so they were owned by 2 brothers that were in the succession line of the original title holder for the property. Their father owned the property. And so they, their family kind of sold the property to the man that I bought it from. And so passing along the message of how things were set up wasn't the clearest. And so I was thinking, okay, I got 4.5 hectares. Somebody else told me it was 5. So if I get those 2 pieces, that will make it the 5 that I was originally told. And I was told, oh, they'll sell to you eventually, right? They'll sell to you eventually. But what ended up happening was that one of the brothers who hadn't put anything on there, which you came through the gate in that area, he came to me almost immediately afterwards looking to sell. And it was for about 25 million Guaranese, which is roughly about 5,000 Canadian dollars, or maybe about 3,200 American. And so we locked that one up, but then I found out after the fact that I was basically repaying for something that I'm under title legally already owned. And so when I was running into issues with his brother, who actively lives there and has his grandchildren there and his kids there that come in, and they, when the kids come in, his adult children come in, they'll throw a big birthday party or something, and they'll drink and put the loud music on, or they burn trash, or just horrible neighbors. Just in general, just horrible neighbors. And so in the back of our head, it was like, okay, it was an older couple, maybe they'll sell, because I thought they owned it. I thought it was theirs. But it was after they tried to get me to sign off on this title transfer thing, and I see this proposition, I'm going, hang on, this is a trap. That's when I called up lawyers, brought them in. They looked into it and go, no, you own the whole darn thing. That's yours. And so, okay, what do we do next? So, yeah, we did this claim method. And so we've already filed with the judge, and we had to post the case in the newspaper for 3 days. And then the next thing that's going to happen is the government's going to send somebody out to meet with them. And then he or she is going to take down their name and their identity number, and then follow up to find out who lives there. And then they'll follow up with a notification of an eviction. And they'll give them a set date on how long they have until they have to go. And they will, oh, wait, guy. Hey, get out of here. Okay, no more. Dusty, my guard dog. So what we'll do is, so then they'll get informed. Hopefully they take that and leave peacefully. I doubt it. And then what will end up happening is that the police will be sent to escort them off the property, and they'll have to get their property, their items and possessions off. And then they can take the roof off of their homes, because their homes are mostly kind of real roughshod, kind of slapped together. So they can take the roof off. The rest of it's actually kind of dirt and sticks that they do that they make the walls with. So they'll keep, and they'll take everything out, and then a tractor will come and flatten it. And then the plan is that we'll probably change our driveway in and immediately change it. Just immediately make it so that anybody who drives by will know, okay, this is not the same, and can't move back in, and those kind of things. Again, not a fun situation. Once I realized, I was like, hang on, I already own this, and we're not doing well with them being here. I went to them hat in hand, tried to say, listen, I'm going to give you what I gave your brother for the same amount of land over here. His is more valuable because I can actually plant crops on it, whereas theirs is mostly over rock. But I'll give you the same amount. And so that was 25 million Guaranese. And their response was no less than 200 million Guaranese. And I said, that's not happening. That's not happening at all. The next morning they go, okay, well, we've thought it over and we're going to give you a real good deal, 100 million guaranis, and you can keep the buildings on it. It's like, I don't want those. I talked to the lawyer. The lawyer said, actually, the whole process to get them off will be about 20 million. And I was like, look, I said to them, like, no, my offer stands. It's take it or leave it. You got until this date, and if you don't meet that date, and then we will proceed. And so we made the 25 million offer. We lined up a place for them that was 15 million for them to move into. I was going to pay for their moving expenses. I was going to give them. I have extra hardware for making updating a bathroom and doing all kinds of stuff. I was going to do all kinds of stuff, and instead, basically, greed kicked in, and their kids came in and said, "No, we're not doing it. This is for anything less than," and they shot another number, and I said, "No, that's it. All right. Well, you've got until the end of today, and if it's not done, we will proceed." And so that was back in February. So here we are now, May 1st, and I was told it was going to take about 3 to 6 months to complete the entire thing, and we're getting into the home stretch.
And the thing is that people coming from Canada or America or Australia, wherever, would look at a situation where you move into a house that you've purchased and there's other people living on it. And at the time you didn't actually know that was your land.
Yeah.
But even putting that aside, it's not uncommon to move onto a property that people are living on, particularly when it's groundkeepers or caretakers. And so I don't have the answer for this, but I would say that in any situation where you're moving onto land where people are living on it and will be living on it when you arrive, that's something that you really need to proceed carefully with, isn't it?
Yeah, and again, we were kind of told it was a temporary thing. It was just a matter of time, and the elderly couple that were there, they didn't have much left to go, and let them be, and and the family will sell to you, and I was given bad intel. I was just given bad intel. Had I had the right intel, then I probably would have either built that into my offer and saying, hey, this is going to cost me to get these people out of the way, or B, once I bought it, I would have immediately started the claim process right then and there. Because the thing is, again, I tried.
Yeah.
We tried to make an offer, and this is common. This is very common. Apparently, there are all kinds of cases like this where somebody buys property, they find somebody living on that property, they don't want to leave, they don't have a right to it, they don't have a claim to it, they just set up shop. It's kind of like a squatter, and then the judge wants to see that you've made an effort, and we did that many times. I've made several offers over the time, and I even said to them, I'll even buy it from you just knowing that you'll be the last ones. Just trying to leave that open. But once their daughter came in, because the thing in Paraguay too, squatters' rights work where if somebody can prove that they've been living on a property, I believe it's for 7 or 10 years, then they have rights that they can claim, and that you can't move them. And so, depending on how you approach it, now the thing is that the people that are here, they didn't put it. They had 17 years to put something together in terms of and it was a family issue on their end, nothing to do with us. And by the time we came in, it's like, look, I bought the property. The title says it goes to the road. You're not giving me access to the road. You're burning trash. You're causing the environment around me to be polluted. I can't teach you. And here's the other thing is that unfortunately, people can blame the education system or ignorance or all that kind of stuff. Nah, man, this is not one of those cases. We're just talking about people without the capacity. You try to explain. I hired a lawyer that speaks Guarani just so we could do it as friendly and normal as possible. And that lawyer won't even come here anymore because they screamed at her and yelled at her off the property a few times. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, so it's toxic. But at the same time, so for example, what we did afterwards is we just, along the fence line, I bought shade cloth and just strung it all the way across just to not see each other.
Yeah.
You know, just to not see each other. That's one of the things when you're living in like the cities in Paraguay. So Cacupe has this, Asuncion has this. A lot of the properties are actually walled off. And so it's funny because when we were living in Asuncion, I felt like we had more privacy than we do here in the middle of nowhere because of who we've got nearby. As soon as that situation sorted out, it's going to be exactly the way we saw it. Yeah.
So just thinking about what you're saying there, when looking at a property that seems to be in the middle of nowhere, you still really need to be careful and diligent about checking what's around that property.
Oh, absolutely. And I would actually spend about $400 or $500 to hire a topographer before you buy a property. Have them walk the property and tell you, you know, they can throw a drone up, they can do all kinds of stuff, and just tell you, you know, here's your limit. Here's the limit of this property, and you know, you got to know if somebody's on it or not. And again, if they're on it, what's their claim to it? Like,
Sure.
what is their claim to it? You brought up a good point about the groundskeeper or the capatas they call it, or an encargada. You know, like that's common. And actually, I'm hugely supportive of hiring somebody to have on your land. I mean, honestly, I think it's when we looked at this place, the guy that was already running the place, I met him and I said to my wife on the way back, I go, I'm not investing in that property. I'm investing in that guy. He's fantastic. And he's been just the most loyal, incredible guy to have around, you know, and he has helped us with so many different things. It's so invaluable, and the reason why to have a good groundskeeper or capitas or employee on your property is you have somebody who is there to look out for your best interests. And I mean, learning Spanish is one thing. Learning Guarani is a whole other ball of wax. So, you know, what's nice is that with him, you know, for example, let's say we're buying roof tiles or we're buying bricks for building materials. Now, if I go there to the building material place, I'm going to get the gringo price, right? But if I send him in and he speaks Guarani with the guy and they get along, he might get me 50, 60% off of the price that I would have been offered. And so that's super valuable. As well, certain things happen, like, you know, Ande, the power company here, they struggle sometimes to keep up. And so when you're driving in, you'll notice that, you know, there's the power lines all along the road. And what's next to those? Trees. And so if you get a good rainstorm or you get wind, it's very easy for one of those power lines to get knocked down. And so to have somebody on your team that can, you know, make the claim to the power company, get that sorted out real quick, knows all the community, knows who's good at this and who's good at that to do a project. I mean, it pays for itself completely. It's I think it's the best way to go about it is to make sure you have somebody on your team that's a local that maybe is on your payroll if you can swing it.
Yeah, it's a country of relationships, isn't it?
The País de los Amigos, they call it. Yeah, a country of friends. And, you know, and that's the thing, right? Is that the other thing that I've brought up to people that are coming here, because it's funny, because this isn't a knock on the German community, but the German community in Paraguay has been here for quite a while, and they've established quite a reputation for themselves. And one of the reputations is good when they come, because they'll hire a bunch of locals. So there's a lot of work that comes from the locals to build the house, and then they build the wall around the house, and then they close the wall, or close the gate, send everybody out, and then they're never heard from again from the community. They don't talk to the community, they don't get along with them, they don't do any of that stuff. We've taken a different tact. I love trying to get involved with the community. I believe in social capital. You know, if everything goes to heck, I'm going to need these people on my team, on my side, and I'm going to need to be on their side. And so I feel like, you know, the more you can get to know your neighbors, the better. I had a friend of mine when we first moved down here who was from Canada, and she recommended to me, she says, every single time you see your neighbors, when you're leaving your place or you're coming back to your place, always wave. Always wave and smile. It might seem like a little nothing, but it's something. And just in the first month of being here, you know, basically it got back to me. It's like, oh yeah, now they're all talking about the Canadians. The Canadians are here, right? Because we're total unicorns out here. There's not, unless you're a Mennonite, most of the Canadians are in the Chaco, right? But if you were, all of a sudden it's like, oh, the Canadians have moved here. They're really friendly. They always wave. So those kind of things, they do help out along the way. And so, yeah, I highly recommend getting a groundskeeper. I highly recommend looking over the property and make sure, if you don't have to displace somebody, if there's other options, then go that route. But in our case, again, we were given bad intel. We thought we had 4.5 hectares going that way, and that someday we'd be able to unite it all together under one thing. But once we found out that, oh no, it's actually only 4.5, and I'm only getting access to 4 because a half of hectare is being eaten up by these two different, informally sectioned off areas. It was an escalation, right? It was an escalation. We had, again, my daughter cut her foot on a piece of broken glass that was tossed over the fence by them. We offered with our truck to collect their garbage and take it to the big bin. Nope, they wouldn't do that. They burn their garbage, and it smells horrible. And it's just those kind of things that had we known better. But again, we're now our roots are planted. We're here now. We're in the process. I hopefully can pass along these lessons to other people so that they don't, fall into those same sort of things. I would say that our nuisances are probably a lot less than some people have had in this country. I've heard horror stories of people buying a title on a land and then finding out that the title wasn't valid and having it get flipped to somebody else and they don't get their money back, those kind of things. So a good legal representation while going through the process is wise. Try to stretch out the process. Don't give the remaining payment until you see the ink on the page from them first, and then hit send or hand over the check, or if it's just cash, just cash. Just make sure you're not the last one in it. I know it sounds paranoid, but Paraguayans almost instill that paranoia. They warn you all the time, like, don't trust anybody, right? So you got to be as careful as can be. Because I come from I run a podcast called High Trust, Low Context. And the high trust part comes from my childhood, which was I grew up in a town. I grew up in Calgary, in Canada. And when I was growing up, it was just other families on the block. We'd play street hockey. We'd go ride our bikes. If I came home from something and I wanted to know where all my buddies were, I would just look down the block and see where all the bikes were laying on the lawn. Now, nowadays you can't do that. Your bike's going to get stolen. But I grew up in a high trust society, and we're not in that anymore. I'd love to get to that point, but it's very difficult to get to. And so, flipping my brain around and being like, no, actually, this is a low trust society. This is what they call a low trust society. The people do not trust each other. That's why I have to put a guarantee down on my lawsuit. That's why you have to do pagares and all kinds of different things, is because it's too many people in the past have cheated other people that they had to kind of put all these little stopgaps in, and they might not seem completely clear to you at first, but then you kind of logically process. You go, okay, somebody must have done something along the way that warranted having to have this safeguard in place. And so respect the safeguards, because they're there to help you. It might take forever to get your properties signed off and closed and the title in your hand. Respect the process. The reason why it's that way is because you want this government body to research and look up any kind of data on the property beforehand. Hey, Dusty, no, out of here. My guard dog again. Hey, buddy, come here. But you let them work through the process. It might seem like it takes forever, but it's worth it. And once, there's no better feeling than when you've got that title in your hand, your name's spelled correctly, everything's on there. You go, okay, this means something. Sure. This can't be taken away from me without a fight. Yeah. And so that for us was a big accomplishment.
Yeah. And once you get to that point, you're secure then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then so we were told also, okay, you want to get an architect if you're building, just so you can get the designs and send them to the municipality so they can sign off on them. Otherwise, you might have somebody come down the road and go, whoa, hang on, that's not a sanctioned property, kind of thing like that. Now, if you're building just a little small place to yourself, nobody's going to care. But if you're kind of sticking out with a little bit larger than everybody else's properties, you're gonna draw attention. So to mitigate that, we got an architect, went straight to the municipality, got them to sign off on it, and so no harm, no foul. Everything's fine in that regard.
Did that cost you much?
Not much at all, hardly. No, I think to get the architect to design the whole thing for us was about $1,000 US, maybe, maybe about $800 US.
Yeah.
Now, what we made the mistake of doing is we were then recommended to hire the architect to facilitate the whole build, like to run the crew and do all that kind of stuff. Now, I highly recommend against that. We made a mistake in that regard because the pricing, the way that they work that is that the architect can take as much as 15% on the total cost of everything as their payment. Now, where is the incentive for her or him to find you a discount on materials or to get you the best deal possible? There's no incentive whatsoever. You know, like I remember I came in and I was like buying like these fans and lights and stuff, and I had a 20% discount on my through my bank for that particular place, and I had to fight. I was like, no, I'll buy it. Because, like, you know, if you buy it, then it's not just that, but I'm going to spend an extra 15% on top of it. So what I do recommend is if you do hire an architect and get the plans done, then hire somebody completely different to run a crew for you. And there's plenty of capable people that know what they're doing. They can look at the plans and do it all properly for you and get the best deals on those things. Because you'll just give them a flat rate. You know, they won't be gouging you on all those other things. Whereas in this case, it's like, you know, they keep spending, and there's no incentive for you to save anywhere. Like, I mean, even our roof cost, the roof that we got, this insulated type roof, cost 25% of the entire cost of my house. Now, she recommended us to getting into it, but if I would have just used the clay tiles that everybody else is using, I would have probably saved quite a bit of money just not going down this road. But, you know, that's the problem with the confidence thing is that you win the trust. You go, oh, you did a great job on the design, and then you think, okay, they're in my best interest, but they're not. Not always. So you have to be very careful about where those incentives lie and all those kind of things. So that's something to watch out for as well if you're constructing something. But the other thing is that, again, if you buy a property and let's say it already has a groundskeeper on it, chances are that guy knows a whole bunch of people in the area and they can build it for you.
Sure.
And it's going to cost you a third of the price that you would have done with the other crew.
Just to a point, your building that we're sitting under here, just because you made a good decision about the roof and the materials that we use for the roof, it's fundamentally changed the thermal dynamics of this building.
Yeah, we wanted really high.
Yeah.
We wanted really high. That was the other thing, though, is that there was a lot of requests that I did make that did not get heated. So, for example, you want to have a high roof, but you need to have a heat escape. You know, and so we were putting in, you know, I said to them, I was like, I need to have this opening here and this thing, and there, you know. We also like to have our windows open. But there's bugs, right? Like you're going to have different kind of insects and stuff. So we want to have screens on there. But the lady was like, no. I'm going to put doors in there and then you can open them up and it'll be flowy. And it's like, yep, you're not listening to me. And so that's the other thing is that if you do get a crew on board for you, you kind of have to be on it all the time to make sure that it's being done exactly the way that you have asked for. So, you know, and that's just kind of, the other thing is that, you know, they mean well, but they'll be like, oh, he doesn't mean it. You know, like, oh, he just doesn't know better. Well, we know what he really wants. Yeah. And so I had all kinds of stuff that was put in, and I looked in afterwards. I go, nobody consulted me on that. I would have chosen something different. And
you got to be on top of it.
Yeah, but that's the thing too. The only house I ever bought back home was already built. Had been it was an older home that had been around for over a decade, and so this was my first time seeing a build from scratch. And so you can look at the paper, but to actually know how it's going to look and feel, like we were constantly watching this because we were living here for most of the process of it being built, that you're watching it as it's being built and you my mind could not see what it was going to look like in the end until it was done.
Of course.
And so those kind of things come up because architects, they know what they're doing, designers know what they're doing, and they've got their whole thing like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, you're going to love this, I'm going to talk to your wife about this, I'm going to do that. But make sure you are very strict about like, I need to have this particular thing done this particular way. Like for example, with our electricity, I said to them, I know in Paraguay it's not very common to have a house wired with a ground in it. And I said, because we use different electric appliances, and I do all my work from home on my computer, there were times in Asuncion when I'm typing away at my computer and I'm getting shocked by my own computer because of just how bad the wiring was done. So I remember I was very clear all the time, please, I need you to put a ground in for this house. Sure enough, they leave no ground, right? And so everything was in. So I had to get another electrician to come out and actually put it in, but it had to kind of go in each individual each individual socket from the outside. So it's just like those kind of things because every wall is brick. So it's not like back home where I had, wood and drywall. And if I wanted to put something in the wall, I just tear the drywall off and then put something in there and then put it back on again. It's not like that here,
No.
right? Once it's in, it's in. So, you got to think ahead of time. Like if I want to have an outlet over here, it's got to be in there when I'm building the house.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
And just in terms of building, would you have any advice to anyone, just a rough ballpark per square metre estimate of cost?
That's a tough one. I wish I did. I was asked that actually by a mutual friend recently, and I had to pull out my plans and do all that kind of stuff. But because of the way that my house was built, and it was kind of built section by section, different parts involved different costs to build them, that I didn't get a real... and because we were expanding on from another house, so parts of it were knocked down and stuff like that, I don't have a real accurate per square meter thing. But if you go the simple route, so for example, if you go the simple route, you can, let's say you were you're a bachelor coming down here, just wants to build a simple 1-bedroom, bathroom, living room, kitchen, yada yada. You could probably do that whole thing for about 35 million guaranis. So like, I don't know what you paid for your vehicle, but it's like roughly the price of a vehicle.
Yeah.
And that's actually why you'll find a lot of these places that'll say, open to trade for a vehicle as payment for a property that already has something on it. And so roughly, so if you think about it in terms of about 35 million guaranis for the basic, you kind of compartmentalize from there and go, okay, well, I'm going to need another bathroom and maybe 2 other bedrooms and stuff like that. And then so you might want to look at like that being about double or triple to get all that in. And then if you want to go bells and whistles and have like a quincho, quinchos aren't as expensive because, if you do it just the basic way, you're going to have a brick column and a brick column and a brick column and then a roof over top, right? And sometimes, actually, I've seen a lot of these properties where people are using the wood from their own property as part of the base for their own roof. And I mean, in fact, the roof on my extension on my office now is wood from my own property. So, those kind of options are available. So there's a lot of variables up and down on that, but yeah, it really kind of depends on what you're looking for and all that kind of stuff. Now, the one thing I also will mention, if you are getting it professionally built for you, is things that we take for granted aren't always included in the price. So, for example, say you want to have a hot water. If you want to have a hot water tank, well, you're going to need to have that wired for that ahead of time. You don't want to have one of the battery or the little if you don't want one of the electrical ones. And so they don't include you. You would think that they're going to include fans and air conditioning units and kind of climate control stuff. That's not assumed here. So we found out as we were going, like, oh crap, I have to buy a new air conditioning unit for every room that I have put, that we're going to be spending time in. So, that adds up, right? Because actually, you can't cut corners on the price of an air conditioning unit here, and those things run you about $800 to $1,000 a piece, depending on the size of the room that you're going in. So that's something to factor in as well, because you're not going to live very well without climate control. And as you were driving in today, I also mentioned like our power went out, and our power goes out in this spot probably about twice a week, and it's just something I have to kind of live with. Some weeks we don't have it, but often we do, and it's not gone for a while. But it's not like our food spoils or anything like that, but it's just like a headache. And so we are contemplating. We talked about solar panels as a potential, but because the Paraguayan electricity is so darn cheap that it's not economically feasible or logical to buy the panels that'll never pay for themselves unless your fear is the grid going down for forever, right? Which is, it's a legitimate fear in this day and age. That said, though, if I don't know, some sort of EMP or something goes over, your solar panels ain't going to work neither. So my thinking is that I'm probably going to get the battery system that you would have for a solar panel system, and just have that wired up, charge that for pennies per kilowatt or whatever from the government power supply, and then when it goes down, just flick the switch and then go off my battery power while I need it, and then boom, the power will come back on before it dies. Hopefully, if you set it up right.
Can you tell me how you approach the issue of payment?
Yeah. So when we were doing it, we had milestones. Once this section was done, we would pay ahead of time to get that section done. Once it's done, you pay for the next one. And so that we had, I think ours was set on a schedule of like 5 payments that went.
Is that what you proposed, or did the builder?
That was how it was done with the builder.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And so at least I had in my head, okay, I'm going to have this many months until this time. Now, again, you'd think those would be, scheduled properly and organized, but they weren't. So there was times where we got hit, and it was like, oh, we're already on to the next one. We need the next payment. Oh, well, you said it would be done by March. Okay, all right, well, here we go. And so, make sure you have some of that on hand. And then on top of it, again, we had it where it was like, oh, we'll do this for you, no problem. We'll do this for you, no problem. And I'm thinking, because maybe you bought too many materials, and it seems like we've got extra rock around here, so you built me a fire pit. And then at the end, they hit me with this extra bill showing an extra amount of money that they were charging for all these things. I'm like, well, you said yesterday. I'm like, you flippantly asked me about this on the side. And so be very careful as well about, extras or gifts or help or anything like that.
That's a good point with not just houses, but anything when you're dealing in Paraguay. If anything's mentioned in terms of, doing something. Yeah. Like, for example, I had it with my car, I made a mention about something else that I was thinking about getting sorted.
Yeah, and then they did it.
And then it came back, and it had been done without us actually agreeing to it being done.
And then you had to pay for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so the second part of my podcast name, so it's high trust, low context. So there's a type of communication, right? So there's a sociologist, I forget the name of this, the book, but it defines different types of communication in cultures. So there's low context cultures, which low context meaning very direct, very clear communication, very clear instruction. I want this done by this time at this date. And so one of the things that I learned when I came to Paraguay is it is not the same sort of communication as I'm used to back home, right? So, me and my friends, we'll just shoot a meme to each other. You don't have to say, hey, Bob, how's it going? How are you this morning? How are the wife and kids? You just go, boom, hey, check this out, ha, 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 right? And whereas here, there's this formality. For example, we had a landlady back in Asuncion before who got very upset because she would come and I'd be like, oh, hey, here's your rent. Bye. And she was so offended that I didn't invite her in for a cup of coffee or to ask about her kids or do all this kind of stuff. So the high context is this is a culture that doesn't like direct communication, doesn't like you going straight at the issue. They prefer that you kind of beat around the bush and everything's kind of done with idiosyncrasies, little movements, even just a head tilt or something can change the context of something really quickly. And so you kind of have to learn how that goes. So it's instead of saying to somebody hey, why did you do this thing? Oh, I have a perfect example. So our groundskeeper, we love, he's great.
Yeah.
But I remember I kept on asking him, hey, when can you fix the faucet and the hose so that my wife can water the garden, right? And oh yeah, mañana, I'll get it done tomorrow, or I'll get it done today. And then like a week goes by or 2 weeks goes by, and you're like, hey, like that's something I need done. Like let's get that done. So that's me in a low context, Phil, saying I need this done by you today. You know, like and thinking that's clear. You know what got him to actually do it? My wife going out, filling the bucket and walking and like struggling with these buckets of water to go out to the thing. Finally, him seeing that was like the thing that kind of changed it. So
Yeah, right.
So it's almost like instead of saying, "Hey, the hose is broken, fix it," be like, "Wow, it would sure be nice if I had some way of getting water from this point to that point," and then it's their idea. Oh, wait, I'm going to do this thing for them. You know, so. It's just learning how to communicate, and it's beyond just the language.
Yeah.
It's actual how you communicate with people. It's like if you get invited to something by a Paraguayan, right? And you know beyond the shadow of a doubt, like I'm going to be out of town that weekend. I can't come, right? This is not a culture that actually likes it when you say, no, I can't come. Thank you for the invite, right? Because I'm thinking, oh, you know, yeah, I don't want them buying too much food because they think my family's coming or something like that. They'd rather you say, awesome, thanks. Yeah, you know that's a great. I'll be there, and then not show up. It's the weirdest thing, but it's a culture that hates the word no, and so I don't know where it comes from, but it is. And then like, let's say you're throwing a thing, and you're trying to plan out how much food to buy. Yeah, guess what, Val? It's a crapshoot. You do not know how many people are actually going to show up. They might even say to you, "Yeah, I'm on my way." Or, you know, we just left the house, which means they haven't left it yet. And we're on our way, which means that maybe they're just about to leave the house. You know, I'm 5 minutes away. It means they're about an hour and a half away. Yeah. And so, like, I'm used to, like, direct, clear, honest, blah. Here it's like they prefer the nice lie, the nice, you know, niceties about the things. And you can get mad at it, or you can just kind of embrace it. And that's the one thing that I think is my favorite part about Paraguay. I come from a country that is quote unquote multicultural. So it's a multicultural society in Canada, which means you have all kinds of cultures on your block. So if you're, you know, when I was growing up, all the kids go out and play, their dads come home at 6, and then you're having supper at 6:30. So we're all off the street by 6:30. Well, multicultural, you're going to have people whose families don't eat until 9. You're going to have kids that will have to study through this. It's like every kid's going to have a different kind of outlook on when they can play or when they can't play. So everybody's kind of operating off of a slightly different manual, slightly different rule book. So if you move to Paraguay, it's like you don't have to learn, okay, this family over here does this and this family over here does it. No, everybody's Paraguayan. So it's a monocultural society, and it makes it a lot easier to go, okay, I don't have to learn 5 different cultures at once. I just got to learn one.
Yeah.
I just got to learn one. And once you start to get it, you start to see the things that make it beautiful. And Paraguayan culture is beautiful.
Yeah.
They're a very kind people. They're very warm and open people. They're not closed. They don't shut the wall down and kick you out. They're very warm and they want to help you. I've had 2 times now where I've had a flat tire on the road, and like the first time I had it, I injured my ankle the night before stepping off of a bad stair, and so it was on New Year's Eve. And there was a New Year's Eve party going on, and we were driving by, and we had no phone coverage or anything. And they all came out, and they brought their tools, and they changed the tire for us, and they're offering beers and all this kind of, it was great. And so those kind of things, like, are really cool about Paraguay, and you do realize, like, when you come here, you stick out. You completely stick out wherever you go, but that's not a bad thing, right? It's not a target on your back in Paraguay. We're not in Colombia. We're not in El Salvador or any of these places that have had histories of those kind of things. You come out to a place like this, they've never seen a Canadian before. You know, you come out to a place like, they've never met somebody from New Zealand before. You know, like, we don't come across them very often. So there's a curiosity on their standpoint. And, you know, there is that the othering that happens. But you have the chance, when you come here, to write the story, to actually write out what they think of your culture.
Sure.
And be that example for them. And I think that's one of the cool things about being here for us is we've been able to find our way in. And actually, I can never see myself going home after this.
No, I totally agree with you. And it's very interesting what you say about communication styles, and I can totally vouch for that. And it's something that's a long process to really work out. Yeah, it totally is. Yeah.
And you get really angry sometimes, like, stop burning garbage, right? That doesn't work.
No.
What got them to stop throwing the trash over was saying, look at my child's foot.
Yeah.
Right? Look what my child's foot is. This isn't me. I didn't make this. This is not my bottle.
Yeah.
This is your bottle. And I handed it to her to go have her dispose of it on her own.
Yeah,
and
right.
That's the way.
The way you get it across.
Yeah.
So just looping back, the most important thing I want to get across in these videos is lessons. I think that key takeaways are you would have avoided a lot of dramas had you geo-mapped your property, if
possibly
properly surveyed.
I would have probably put in a little bit more time and effort into when they told me they had a contract for that piece of land. I would also, I would have looked at the survey of the land and go, okay, hang on, this actually goes to the road. And be like, what's this all about? Because they told me, there's a private contract that's been signed that gives them the right to be there. And that was a lie. That was a lie. That never took place. It never came about. And there is a way to have your legal team look into that, to go into the government records, pull up anything, and find out, is there any other claim that somebody else has on this part of the property or something like that? Like the guy who bought it before me, so the guy who sold it to me, he was getting the title refreshed in his name, and he found out that the previous owner, or the people that sold to them, this family's a real piece of work, they had taken out a huge loan from BNF Bank, the Banco Nacional de Fomento. And so the bank had a lien on this thing, and he comes in and he goes, I bought this property. Nobody said anything about this to me at all. This isn't my debt. What would you like me to do? And so the bank actually gave him kind of a significantly reduced amount just to kind of wipe it off their books, because the guy who they had the debt with had already passed away. And so those, again, you can try to nail off every kind of potential trap, but something's going to get you. That's the other thing. Something's going to get you. Just a matter of get the big ones out of the way, right? Like you'll find out something, right? That's just the way it goes. Okay. So you're going to find out something along the way, and that's kind of the price of doing business. That's the direction of piece of being here in the first place.
Sure. Well, thanks to your help today, I think at least we'll be able to avoid some of the bigger ones anyway.
Yeah. Keep an eye out for those things. Get some good help. To like, if you have a lawyer or somebody that's like, just ask them, have we dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's? And is there anything here that you can see that could potentially become a problem? And before you sign or give that deposit or anything like that, like you do your due diligence ahead of time. Some of them are way easier than others.
Yeah.
Some of them you walk up to the property, the property line, it's pretty easily set up. Maybe a lot of times the boundary will be the creek, or it'll be, the road or something like that. So, some of them are a lot simpler. And so know that could be the case. If you're coming to a fresh slate, then I guess you're not going to have the same sort of issues. And again, this is being dealt with. It's not something that's going to be permanent forever. So, and if there is something like that is a little bit of a hairy thing on it, then come back to the seller and be like, look, man, this is going to cost me this much to fix, so you're going to need to knock that off of the price, and we'll I walk away.
Hey, well, thanks again for
no problem.
The chat and your time. Really generous of you to share some of the things that have probably caused you a lot of pain.
I'm just really excited to see how your adventure goes out, my friend. I can't wait until you've set up your property and you're set up for good.
Well, the plan is to learn from people like you. So,
well, and then the more of us out here that have learned from each other, the more we can stick up for each other.
Totally, man.
So you say you find your tribe, and the tribe finds you.
Totally, man. Totally. Hey, well, that's straight from the El Chaco's mouth. So. Experiences everything in places like Paraguay, so I hope that's been helpful, and it's been very informative to me. I've learned a lot, so it's been worth the effort to come out here and visit this beautiful property. So until next time, take care. Ciao.
Ciao.